The galaxy was silent. Stars burned as they always had, but among the endless light, fear spread like a shadow. One by one, colonies stopped sending messages. Whole systems that had been alive with voices went dark. At first, the Galactic Council dismissed it. They said it was communication failure, trade disputes, maybe even civil wars. But as the weeks passed, more systems fell quiet. Ships sent to investigate never returned. Then, the signal came. It was not a normal message. It was broken, filled with static and fear. The voice trembled as if the speaker already knew death was near. Across the council chambers, every alien listened. The transmission was short, desperate, and clear. They are here. We cannot stop them. Please, someone, help us. The words were simple, but they carried weight heavier than any fleet. The chamber fell silent. Every leader, every ambassador, every proud empire sat frozen. Who was they? What kind of force could erase entire systems without leaving survivors? The council debated. Some said they should respond, send fleets to help. Others said it was suicide. They had already lost too much. Many agreed that silence was safer. If the unknown enemy spread by attention, better not to answer the cry. But the cry did not stop. Day after day, the signal repeated. Sometimes the voices were different, sometimes children, sometimes soldiers, but the words were the same. Please, someone, help us. Entire galaxies watched, but none moved. In the shadows, whispers began. Old stories resurfaced. Stories about a species once feared, once hated, once admired. A species that had been silent for centuries. Thought lost, thought broken. The name carried both fear and hope. Humanity. Most younger species thought it was only a myth. Old warriors remembered differently. They remembered battles where human ships had turned entire wars. They remembered soldiers who refused to retreat, who fought until their enemies broke. Humanity was not known for mercy. They were known for fire. In the present day, few believed humans still existed, but the desperate cry had awakened something. Somewhere, in a hidden system, the signal reached old ears. On a forgotten outpost, at the edge of a dying star, a machine clicked alive. Screens lit up, voices echoed. Old records played alongside the new distress call. The words carried across the room. A man, scarred, aged, eyes cold with memory, listened. He did not speak. He only pressed a single button, and across the void, Earth heard the cry. Far below, under oceans and continents, ancient bunkers opened. Towers that had slept for generations lit up with energy. Satellites long thought dead reactivated, linking into vast networks, and in the dark of orbit, ships woke. They were not new. Their metal was scarred. Their hulls still carried wounds from forgotten wars. But when the lights came on, when the reactors roared to life, they were more terrifying than anything the Council could imagine. Each one was a giant of steel. Each one carried the silence of a grave and the promise of war. Humanity had not spoken for centuries. But when the cry for help reached them, they did not ask questions. They did not call for debates. They answered. In the halls of the Galactic Council, fear spread. Reports came in, unknown fleets leaving hidden systems, signals matching the old human codes. Ambassadors shouted, demanding confirmation. Some were relieved. Others were terrified, because they all knew one truth. When humanity moved, it was never for peace. The desperate cry had been heard. The galaxy waited, uncertain whether salvation or destruction would follow. And as the human fleet turned its course toward the source of the signal, one thing became clear. The cry for help would not be answered with gentle words. It would be answered with fire and fury. Deep inside the Sol system, Earth no longer slept. The cry for help had spread across its networks, decoded by machines that had waited for centuries. Humanity had not spoken to the galaxy in generations, but the old fire inside them never died. It had only been waiting. At first, The world was quiet. Cities still glowed, oceans still moved, and people lived their lives, unaware of what was coming. But in hidden places, underground bunkers, orbital stations, and secret vaults, the old war code was activated. Red lights flashed, sirens echoed in long-forgotten halls, doors sealed, locks opened, and giant hangars shook with life. Ancient war machines covered in dust powered on. The ground itself seemed to tremble as humanity prepared to rise again. The Council had forgotten, the galaxy had forgotten, but humanity never forgot the wars they had fought. They remembered the enemies that had come before. They remembered the cost of survival. And they had built their fleets not just to win, but to endure. The Awakening, fleet orbiting above Earth, massive dreadnoughts came to life. Their hulls were scarred with burns from old battles, but their weapons were sharper than ever. Smaller ships swarmed around them like wolves protecting a giant. Every engine roared, shaking space with energy. Crew members rushed to their stations, pilots strapped into fighters. Old captains, long retired, put on uniforms once more. They moved with purpose, no hesitation, no fear. Because when humanity was called, there was no question, only action. Deep inside the flagship, a voice spoke through the intercom. This is the old oath. We do not ignore the call. We do not fear the darkness. We answer as one. Humanity does not kneel. Humanity does not retreat. Humanity answers with fire. And the fleet responded with a thunderous cheer. The enemy revealed. While humanity prepared, alien eyes watched. Across the stars, probes recorded every movement, every ship leaving, dock. Some aliens celebrated. They thought salvation had come. Others panicked. They remembered the old stories of human wrath and feared what would follow. The enemy, the force that had destroyed colonies, was still moving. It was not a single empire. It was a swarm. Countless ships, black as night, spread across systems, like a plague. They did not speak. They did not negotiate. They only consumed. The Council tried once more to act. Fleets were sent. Brave soldiers died. Entire worlds burned. And still, the swarm came. The cry for help grew louder. And with it, the signal of the human fleet, first contact in shadows. The human fleet did not arrive with announcements. They did not broadcast messages of peace. They moved in silence just as they always had. Scouts went ahead, small stealth ships that vanished into the void. They carried no flags, no symbols. Only one message burned into their systems. Find the enemy. Mark the target. Let the fleet burn the sky. When the scouts returned, the humans knew what they faced. And unlike the Council, they did not tremble. The decision, inside the Council chamber, panic spread. Messages screamed across the networks. Human fleets are moving. Some begged the Council to ally with humanity. Others demanded they stop humanity before another war began. But before any decision could be made, the reports came. Human ships were no longer hiding. They were moving fast, engines glowing brighter than suns. Their weapons were armed. Their course was set, toward the swarm, toward the desperate cry, the return of fire on Earth. Families watched the broadcasts. Children pointed at the skies as ships rose above the clouds. Old veterans stood silently, tears in their eyes. The galaxy might have forgotten who humanity was. But Earth remembered. Every launch, every engine, every roar of steel was a promise. The promise that when the galaxy begged for help, humanity would never turn away. Not with mercy, not with weakness, but with fury. The galaxy trembled. The enemy advanced. And humanity awakened once more, not as a forgotten people, but as a storm that could not be stopped. The swarm spread like night over the stars. Entire fleets had already fallen, their wreckage drifting in silence across the void. The Galactic Council sent ship after ship, but each force was swallowed. The enemy moved without fear, without hesitation, like an endless tide. And still, The cry for help echoed across the galaxy. Then the stars shifted. Human warships entered the system. They came without warning, without ceremony. No messages, no flags, only shadows that grew brighter as their engines cut through the void. At first, the aliens watching did not believe it. They thought it was another rumor, another story about humans that would fade like smoke. But when the first human dreadnought emerged from the jump, the truth became impossible to deny. Humanity had returned. The enemy moved quickly, turning toward the new arrivals. Their ships were black, sharp, like swarms of knives. They outnumbered the human fleet 100-1. The Council had believed no force could stop them, but the humans did not flinch. Their ships glided forward in perfect silence, weapons still cold as if daring the enemy to come closer. The swarm struck first. Countless beams of fire shot through the darkness, burning toward the human fleet. It was enough energy to shatter moons, enough power to erase entire cities. But before the flames could touch the dreadnoughts, the humans answered. In the span of a heartbeat, the black void lit up. Human rail cannons fired with thunder that shook sensors across the system. The first wave of the swarm vanished, torn apart before their commanders realized they had been targeted. Lasers burned with surgical precision, each shot placed with terrifying calm. Explosions rolled across the sky like stars dying in fast motion. The aliens, watching from distant probes, fell silent. They had expected a battle of desperation. What they saw instead was execution. Humanity did not fight like a cornered prey. They fought like hunters who had waited for this moment. The swarm threw more ships forward, drowning the sky with numbers. They surrounded the humans from every side, but the dreadnoughts kept advancing. Smaller human ships darted between giants, firing in coordinated strikes. Enemy squadrons crumbled, breaking apart into fragments of fire. Still, the swarm pressed harder. They launched massive carriers, each releasing waves of fighters like dark clouds. For a moment it seemed the humans would finally be overwhelmed. Sensors showed enemy numbers blotting out entire sectors of space. But the humans had prepared for this. Without a word, their formations shifted. Fighters shot out from human carriers, fast and sharp as lightning. They moved not in chaos but with exact purpose. Every squadron acted as if guided by a single mind. Enemy carriers that had taken centuries to build burned within minutes. Fighters that had filled the void now scattered, chased by human machines that struck with merciless precision. Inside the swarm, panic began to spread. They had faced countless species before, had consumed empires that resisted them. But this was different. Their enemy was not afraid. Their enemy did not retreat. The largest of the human dreadnoughts broke through the center of the swarm. Its hull was scarred, its metal dark with age, but its weapons glowed with fury. A single barrage erupted from its cannons, and entire enemy formations were reduced to wreckage. The swarm reeled back, and for the first time hesitation appeared. From the distant stars, those who had sent the original cry for help watched in disbelief. They had expected death. They had prayed for survival. They had not imagined this. Humanity had come not to defend, but to destroy. The battle raged on. Hours passed, but the humans showed no weakness. Every move was calculated, every strike perfect. They did not waste energy. They did not show mercy. Where the swarm pushed, humanity pushed harder. Where the swarm tried to run, humanity cut them down. By the time the last enemy ship broke formation, the void was filled with silence again. Debris floated in endless fields of fire, glowing like fallen stars. The human fleet did not cheer. They did not send messages of victory. They simply turned, reformed their lines, and waited for the next battle. Across the galaxy, the story spread. For generations, humanity had been silent, forgotten, thought lost. But the cry for help had woken them, and their answer had come like thunder across the stars. The aliens who had begged for aid stared in awe. They whispered to themselves, afraid of what they had seen but unable to deny the truth. The cry had been answered, not with comfort, not with peace, but with fury. The battle that had shaken the system was only the beginning. The swarm was vast, stretching across hundreds of stars, and though one wave had fallen, more were already moving. They were endless, like a tide that refused to recede. Entire clusters of ships regrouped, preparing for the next strike. To the Council it seemed impossible. To the survivors, it looked hopeless. But humanity did not see it that way. The human fleet pushed forward, deeper into enemy territory. Their dreadnoughts did not slow. Their fighters did not hesitate. Every ship carried the same purpose, not survival, but victory. Where others fought to delay defeat, humanity fought to end the war before it could grow. The swarm thought themselves predators, but now they faced something fiercer. The next clash came at the edges of a dying star. The swarm poured in with overwhelming numbers, filling space like a living storm. Entire sectors lit up as their weapons fired. The star's light dimmed under the shadow of their fleet, but the humans did not falter. They accelerated into the heart of the storm, their cannons already glowing, their formations already shifting into patterns the swarm could not break. The first salvos were brutal. Human weapons tore apart the front ranks of the enemy, scattering debris in every direction. But the swarm closed in, layers upon layers of ships pressing tighter, wrapping around the humans like a trap. The Council, watching from their distant outposts, expected to see the humans finally crushed. Then it happened. The dreadnought at the center of the human fleet released something the galaxy had not seen in centuries. From its belly, a weapon, fire that did not strike one target but many at once. Invisible arcs of energy rippled outward, severing ships in silence. In seconds, dozens of swarm carriers split apart, their hulls glowing white before shattering into dust. The swarm recoiled, but the humans did not stop. They advanced relentless, striking at weak points, breaking the formation from inside. Human frigates darted through the chaos like knives, cutting lines and collapsing entire sections of the enemy. Every move was brutal, precise, merciless. Aliens, who had once begged for help, now trembled as they watched. This was not the mercy of saviors. This was the fury of warriors who answered only with fire. The swarm screamed across comms, voices full of confusion, fear, rage. But humanity gave no reply. Their silence was louder than words, their weapons the only answer. Hours turned to days. System after system burned. Human fleets moved like storms, arriving without warning, striking with devastating force, and then vanishing into the void. Every time the swarm regrouped, humanity was already waiting, already prepared. The Council began to realize the truth. Humanity was not fighting to save the galaxy. They were fighting to destroy the swarm completely, root and shadow. They were not here to rescue. They were here to end the threat. The swarm, once so certain of their dominance, now faced something they could not understand. No plea moved the humans. No numbers overwhelmed them. Even their greatest weapons could not break the iron wall of human fleets. For every ship they lost, 10 more swarm vessels burned. On a distant world, one of the surviving alien colonies watched as the humans arrived. The sky above their planet lit with fire as human warships annihilated the enemy forces in orbit. The aliens expected the humans to land, to speak, to offer words of comfort. But the humans never came down. They did not answer the transmission sent from the ground. They only left behind silence and wreckage. The message became clear. Humanity had returned not as saviors, but as avengers. They had no interest in building alliances or collecting thanks. They answered the cry, but not with kindness. Their answer was fire. Their reply was war. And their only gift was survival bought with fury. In the dark, the swarm began to retreat. They had consumed empires before. They had erased entire civilizations. But never had they faced this. Never had they been hunted. They pulled back, leaving systems they had conquered, trying to regroup somewhere deeper in the void. But humanity followed. They did not allow the enemy to flee. Every escape became a trap. Every retreat ended in destruction. By the end of the campaign, half a sector burned with wreckage. Stars that once carried colonies now glowed with the fire of dead fleets. The galaxy trembled, not only at the sight of the swarm collapsing, But at the realization of what humanity had become, the cry for help had been answered. But the answer was not the comfort of friends. It was the fury of a storm that could not be controlled. And now, the galaxy understood. When humanity moved, they did not bring peace, they brought fire. The war ended not with celebration but with silence. The swarm, once endless, had been broken. Their fleets were reduced to fragments drifting through the void. Their endless advance had turned into scattered survivors fleeing into shadows too deep for even human ships to follow. Entire sectors lay quiet, their stars burning cold above fields of wreckage. The galaxy waited for humanity to speak. Survivors from ruined worlds sent messages of thanks, desperate to reach the ones who had saved them. But humanity gave no reply. Their ships did not stop at alien stations. Their soldiers did not walk alien streets. They left behind no banners, no promises, no speeches. Only fire in the void and silence in their wake. The council was shaken. Many had once doubted humans existed at all. Now they had watched them burn half a sector clean. Some leaders called them saviors. Others called them a greater threat than the swarm. But none dared speak those words aloud when human fleets were still moving through the stars. For months after the war, probes caught glimpses of them. A dreadnought here, a formation of frigates there, passing silently through abandoned systems. They never lingered. They never explained themselves. To the galaxy they seemed like ghosts, warriors who came only when called, then vanished again into myth. On the worlds that had cried for help, survivors built monuments. They carved human ships into stone, painted their skies with human fire. They whispered the same story again and again. When all hope was lost, when no one else answered, the humans returned. Children grew up hearing the words like a warning and a promise. But the story was not told with comfort. It was told with awe and fear. Because everyone remembered the same truth. The humans had not answered with kindness. They had answered with fury. In the council chamber, arguments raged. Some believed humanity could become the new guardians of the galaxy. Others argued they must be feared, prepared against, perhaps even destroyed before they turned their fire on the rest. Yet no action was taken. Every time a suggestion was made to confront the humans, silence filled the room. Every delegate remembered the sight of human warships tearing apart fleets larger than entire empires. No one was willing to test if that fury could be turned against them. Meanwhile, humanity returned to its silence. Their fleets disappeared beyond known space. Colonies that tried to follow them found only empty systems. It was as if humanity had come only to remind the galaxy that they were still there, and then faded back into the dark, but the memory remained. In every corner of the galaxy, whispers carried the tale. The young asked their elders, "Is it true? Did they really come?" And the elders nodded, eyes distant, voices low, repeating the words like a prayer. They begged for aid, and humanity answered. The swarm had been broken, but the greater mark was left in the minds of those who had watched. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy remembered that humans were not myths, not stories, not shadows of the past. They were real, and they were dangerous. In the quiet after war, stars shone brighter. Fleets rebuilt. Worlds scarred by the swarm struggled to live again. But in every system, under every sun, one thought lingered. What if another cry for help rose? What if humanity heard it again? Would they return? And if they did, what would their answer be next time? The monuments stood in silence. Survivors knelt before them, some in gratitude, some in fear. The words engraved into the stone were always the same. They were not written by humans, but by those who had seen them in battle. We cried for help. Humanity came, and the stars burned with their fury. Generations would pass, but the memory would never fade. The galaxy had begged, and humanity had answered, not as saviors, not as friends, but as fire, fury, and war given form. And now every species, every empire, every council member knew the truth. If the galaxy ever cried again, humanity would return, and when they did, the stars themselves would tremble.